legend in the rap game, like Ric Flair was to wrestle. Ain't no question, I'm trying to be a big name. Got 'em laying on the mat where I left 'em. Everybody wanna be rich and famous. They want a house on the hill, no payments. I've been working hard, hear it in the dialogue, looking for a leg like the anybody.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, this is the second show of the night for Future Entertainment and Future Wrestling Podcast. I'm Logan Myers, once again hosting this show and the owner of the show. So let's get started with the introduction of tonight. Tonight's show is all about the rise and fall of WCW and TNA. We have also the including of WWE and the Invasion storyline, and much, much more, with the World Wrestling All-Stars also included in this show. But first, please welcome my co-host, James. Once again, thank you for coming on. Where can they check you out, and how have you been, sir?
I've been good. I've been busy as hell, but I've been good. It's been a rocky few days, and you guys can check me out on youtube.com/user/JHebertside95. That's my main channel. Hopefully I can start uploading there relatively soon, but it all depends. Another channel's been taking a priority, which you can, by the way, check out on youtube.com/user/WYW Pride. That's my CAW league called Weymouth Youth Wrestling. Check it out. Good shit there. And I've been working very hard to produce the best content for you guys on there possible. So please check that out if you really want to see a really good wrestling product, CAW wrestling product, whatever you want to call it. It's really good. Just check it out. And you can also check me right on here. You can check me out on Wrestling Fortune 44 for the Wrestling Rundown. And you can also check out one of the podcasts I did with Hibiki TMD called The Late Night Roustabout. It's a Hibiki High Spots podcast. Check it out.
Thank you, James. Of course, you guys can check me out right there on Twitter at LoganMyers144. Please go check out everything with James on his channel, and including Travis with Hibiki TMD. Go check out Hibiki Pro. Me and him doing commentary and all kinds of good stuff for WWE 2K18. Also, big announcement: the Trivia Mania has been announced, and we will be live on this channel, of course. And the finals will be on Grapple Vision. The 24 participant tournament will happen in the month of August and September.
Yay!
But that's some big stuff going on. But of course, let's introduce our first debuting on the channel, and our first time having Chris from all the way from his podcast. Of course, I'm glad to have you on. And if you guys want to check out his channel, Chris is from the New School Republic podcast. So, welcome, Chris.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
How are you doing, sir? And where can they check you out on any of your social medias?
Okay, yeah. I'm doing very well. You can check us out at www.newschoolrepublic.com. We have a lot of our new and older podcasts uploaded there. Also, we're working on our pilot episode of Living with a Luchador. It's about college students that take in a Mexican luchador who's also a college student that live together. So that'll be on there as well very soon. Yeah, so we'll see if it's going to be a hit or not. Hopefully people like it. And then also we're on, if you just type in YouTube New School Republic, you can be able to find us there. It's a good time.
All right.
Thank you, Chris. It's good to have you for the first time ever. It's weird how you meet people on Facebook in just random groups, and hey, we become like best friends and a family, basically. Trying to promote each other and help out each other in any way, shape, or form, of course.
Because we know YouTube won't.
Yeah, that's true. So true.
But this isn't a rant about YouTube. This is a rant about how WCW started great and then ended in a whimper.
Oh.
Well, at least with the Monday Night Wars. I don't know if you could say anything good about the Jim Herd era either, but yeah, not a lot of people do. But you know, Monday Night Wars specifically started with a bang and then
ended with a bang.
No. It only ended with a bang because WWE had to end with a bang with Shane McMahon. You know.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, let's start off the rise and fall of WCW.
WCW Wrestling.
World Championship Wrestling. Of course, guys, what do you think was the reason why WCW ultimately fell?
What was the reason? There are many reasons.
Well, I'm saying, and what would be your top reason why WCW ultimately fell and WWE purchased the company? James, I'm gonna let the Chris go first since he's brand new and.
I mean, the main reason I think is like a combination of like, Turner not wanting it on the network anymore, that Jamie Kellner or whatever. He's pretty much the end of that. I mean, because here's the reality of the thing. If WCW would have just been on TV and they would have continued, it's kind of like TNA, status quo. It probably wouldn't have changed too much. I don't know if the whole Fusion Media thing would have happened. But let's just say that it just didn't happen. They just kept it on there. I think it would have been status quo for a while, and I don't know how much of a shakeup we really would have gotten. But I think it's just because they canceled it, and I don't think the money was there. That's, I think, the main reason.
Yeah, I agree, honestly, with what you said. I mean, that was just. I feel like one of the biggest downfalls too was, even had that happened. I feel like Vince Russo, in a way, really left them worse for wear. I mean, considering they lost how many millions of dollars? 60 million.
Yeah, something like that. I think he didn't help. I mean, it was really hard after Bash at the Beach.
Yeah, no shit.
Ugh.
The only reason why anybody goes back to that now is because of the sheer, pure meme of it.
Well, it was confusing at the time, and what sense did that make? It was a shoot, there was a work, and then whatever it was, I don't think anybody really even cared. But all it was going to do was just make Hulk Hogan the champion again. How many times do we have to go back to that? And it's like, I mean, that was hard to watch. I mean, I was pulling my teeth in 2000. I mean, there was a little bit of hope with that New Blood storyline. I'm like, okay, finally we got the younger guys starting to get some main event matches. But that kind of, I don't know, that didn't. I think once again, these guys are in control of their storylines. I think Hogan and a couple of the other big shots, so they're gonna tank it no matter what. You can't. There was not one guy in charge that put his foot down like Vince. That was just a mess over there. I mean, I never worked there or anything, but just hearing all these stories, it was just utter chaos.
Yeah, it was. And I feel like that's another thing, too, is that they gave the stars way too much creative control, especially the ones that were ego-driven. Because I feel like that definitely also... As much as I'll give Vince Russo shit, because Vince Russo still could have worked around it, I mean, he just doesn't have the capacity to do it. The Kevin Nash's and the fucking, Psycho Sids and the fucking Hulk Hogan's exercising creative control all the time was just fucking ridiculous, man. It was ridiculous. And the only ones, if you noticed, that got any rumblance of a push were the guys that were friends with them. So the Scott Steiners, the Booker T's, the Jeff Jarrett's. Mm-hmm. And even the Shane Douglases, they were friends with the guys. I mean, they always knew how to buddy you up and get all buddy with you. You know what I mean? It's just, I honestly think just that mentality alone is probably what killed WCW.
Yeah,
to be honest with you,
you're getting paid no matter what. You can show up, you still get paid the same. There's no ambition to really do well. I mean, I was at a job like that, and it was terrible. No one really worked together, and everybody just did the bare minimum, and the company stunk. I mean, so that's kind of what happened. I mean, then you had your core, Billy Kidman. You had Rey Mysterio, Alex Wright.
Yeah, then it was the cruiserweight division at that point was the only thing holding.
Yeah.
the thing up anymore. And by that point, you had already unmasked Rey Mysterio, which was just stupid money you left out on the table, making him a fucking toddler wrestling.
Well, yeah, everybody forgets about that whole little gang they had, like the No Limit Soldiers thing. That was a mess.
And that was bad. Conan, didn't Conan lead that or some shit?
Yeah, him and like Master P, and they even had Brad Armstrong in it.
They could have just done the Latino World Order at this point. Like, I would have rathered that. I honestly would have rathered that looking back, because it's like that fucking thing was a goddamn mess. No one, like, it was like Vince Russo was trying to rekindle the magic he had in, like, what was it, 97 and 99?
Yeah.
But the only reason it worked was because Vince McMahon and, like, other creative writers like Jim Cornette, who always had to fucking rewrite his shit, made it fucking work. That's the only reason it worked.
I know.
And, he's just so full of himself, and it's like, you can blame it on everything, like AOL Time Warner merger, whatever, like the whole media conglomerate merger that Ted Turner was doing. Here's the thing with that. If the program's good and the program's getting viewership and the program's still drawing a good number of viewers and doesn't look like a fucking waste of space, doesn't matter if they don't like it or not, they're going to keep it on the air, period.
Yeah.
If it's drawing, it draws, and WCW was not drawing and they were losing money. So AOL saw this as, well, they're costing us money, so let's get rid of their ass. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Like, everyone wants to come up and, like, say, like, oh, well, it's fucking, well, I mean, yeah, but you got to understand that we're going to kick them off anyway because they didn't like wrestling. Bullshit. No person in business would ever kick off a TV show just for the sheer fact that they don't like him. They might try like hell, but that's why there's board of directors involved.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? Whoa. Hearing myself talk.
Yep, I was just making sure everything was good, with the audio.
Yeah, this time, no, I already checked it. You were fine.
Okay. Now, part of me wants to say, the shoving NWO down our throats towards the end was the...
Oh my god, yeah.
The kill switch that was engaged, and also part of me also has to say, me and Chris talked about this earlier today when we were making sure Skype was working, that towards the end, Kevin Nash was in charge of the booking and the storylines and stuff like that.
And he didn't help either.
To beat Goldberg. So.
And that didn't help either. And the fact that it was himself, and that's the thing that pisses me off. It's like, this is what makes him a mark for himself, and that's why I've never respected Kevin Nash, because if he had saw the writing on the wall, the person that, if you're going to have any NWO member to legitimately look like they could beat Goldberg at Starrcade, it would have been Scott Hall. He was the only real logical choice out of anybody there if you were going to pull that off, and it wouldn't have been with a fucking cattle prod or whatever the fuck they used.
That was horrible.
It would have just been straight up like he was just the better man. I would have actually taken that. Like, okay, yeah, Scott Hall's the man. Fuck it, fair fucks to you, dude. But it was like it had to be Nash, and it had to be with the help of Scott Hall with the cattle prod, and it's like, what the fuck? Are you kidding me with this?
And to be honest with you, everybody's gonna say that one person's name and blame him because everyone else seems to blame him. But towards the end as well is Vince Russo was part of WCW as well.
Yep.
That name's going to be mentioned a lot.
Yeah. Vince Russo, but I'm like, and then you have to think of Kevin Nash and Vince Russo. That was a team for a bit. That was a fucking disaster. Oh boy. Oh boy.
It didn't help. I mean, I remember I went back and I watched Nitros just to prepare for this, and I didn't mind it so much when Russo took over, November, but then December, or maybe it was late September, October, but then towards December, they just brought the NWO back. I'm like, that's the big payoff here? That's what we were building up towards? I did like some of the stuff. Like, they were actually pushing people, and it's like, well, some of the younger guys are actually getting spots, and there's points, and there's purpose, but then it all just fell apart. It's just another NWO thing. I'm like, That was so hard to watch from, like, December to, like, April 2000. Like, it was probably some of the... It was like WCW was dead. Like, it was just like guys were just going out and having matches. You could feel like the life was sucked out of it. I'm like, oh my god, how much more of this? And then they were talking about making, like, I heard rumors they were talking about making Thunder the main show. I'm like, why? Like, why would you do that? It was so bad at that time, so bad. Oh my gosh.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't blame them at that point. They already killed Nitro off to death at that in the span of 2 months.
Yeah, it was.
So I mean, yeah, why not make Nitro the fucking main show? Yeah. I mean, you already fucked up your competition show. Like, fuck. I
know.
Which, by the way, here's another thing that I think killed WCW. If you really think about it, I saw the writing on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
The NWO Wolfpack.
Oh yeah.
Like, and this was like around '98, and like I like the theme, and it's still iconic, and it's like it still like feels cool to rep an NWO Wolfpack shirt, like especially nowadays. But it just seems so fucking stupid to split the split NWO in half, basically, and then put Sting in it and Luger in it. It was just like. So instead of being a part of the WCW side, we're going to create, ready, another NWO and have the guys that were against the black and white NWO in it. What?
Didn't make any sense. It just seemed like they were just trying to put Nash over, and it was just Nash and Nash and Nash. You just get so sick of it, like...
It was bad. It was genuine horse shit in that case, and which, by the way, I wouldn't have minded if at the end of the day you were gonna bring in a wolf pack and you were to add guys into it or whatever as part of the NWO, like it was originally. I would have been fine with that, but then you decide, okay, we're gonna just split the NWO, then we're gonna make an LWO. Then we're going to make another NWO on top of that. I think they had like at least 4 or 5 rip-off NWO things within the actual NWO itself. And then they all just joined back together anyway until Ric Flair and 3 of his guys took out 12 others by ending the NWO. And it's like, oh, I'll put the NWO on the line, dude.
Yeah, it was bad.
And I don't... And then, like... Hogan would, like, I think the last Hogan appearance before the whole Vince Russo regime came in was, I think it was like, what was it, like a Fatal 4-Way Epic, that which was admittedly pretty good. It was like Sting, Hogan,
oh yeah, that was it.
Sting, Hogan, Flair, and DDP, and DDP won his first WCW title there, so, I mean.
Yeah, Spring Stampede 99, that was pretty good.
And, I mean, I guess the only things that really we can like about fucking Vince Russo were that he pushed DDP, Jeff Jarrett to an extent, Booker T, and Scott Steiner for, again, a certain extent. And that's about it.
Well, I do want to mention we do have OJ in the chat. He says, hello, y'all. I love everyone and everything. I'm a man of the people, the people's champ, if you will. Me and my friends came up with backyard wrestling storylines that were never really put into effect. One of them was Jew World Order.
Jew World Order.
And he says, unfortunately, Paul Heyman wasn't available to be the leader.
Ah, yo, he would have been fucking money for that. Oh, yeah.
That is awesome, OJ. Now quick question for both of you guys on, do you think that one of the main reasons why WCW died and got really hurt was Goldberg's streak ending, or no?
No, it depends on how they did it. It depends. It would have the way it ended like was like a turning point. I think for sure. I mean, that's just my opinion. I don't know about Chris here, but like I feel like it wouldn't have mattered had it been like the right circumstance. I don't think it would have killed it. I think it was just the way it happened. You know, cattle prod.
What do you think, Chris?
Well, I remember listening to a couple shoot interviews. I remember Bobby Heenan. I've talked, and he said whoever decided to like have Goldberg like lose, you know, that's what one thing that kind of like, you know, put the company out of business. But I don't think. I mean, we all get sick of everybody. I mean, how much more Goldberg can you take? Someone's got to beat his butt. I mean, and he beat some guys that were questionable. It's like, you beat Wrath. I mean, they had the Berserker. He beat him. The Berserker's like 5 or 6 inches taller than him. I mean, there's some guys that were just not believable. Like, all right. I mean, I understand wrestling. You have to like, you know, suspend belief, but some guys you're like, nah, Goldberg should lose. Like it's. I mean, I don't think so. I think he had to lose eventually. It would just get boring. Like no one could beat him. I think it would mean something if somebody else came over from like WWF and beat him. I think that'd be good. You know, if they would have brought somebody at the time that was, you know, free agent, they come over and, like Bam Bam Bigelow, for example. That would have been perfect, but they didn't do it. And I never understood like that whole situation. Like he showed up, I think in like November '98. He's like, I want Goldberg. I want Goldberg. I want Goldberg.
Now that you mention it, actually, that could have been a hell of a program for the WCW title. Actually, it was Bam Bam first.
And then they just threw Nash in there. It's like, why? Like Bam Bam Bigelow is like, this is the new. He was hot off of the ECW run. I'm like, that's the guy.
No. Let's get it corrected. Nash threw Nash in there. Not no one else. No one else threw Nash.
Yeah, Nash threw himself in. I mean, because I always thought like that would have been better, and then they did wrestle in Super Brawl, but it wasn't good. And then that was it pretty much for Bam Bam. After that, he just was kind of mid card, but I never understood. I mean, like that was hot, and everybody wanted to see it, and then they just kind of bombed it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, like how the fuck do you get a guy like Bam Bam Bigelow too, and like not use him properly? Like you had a golden opportunity to do him versus Goldberg, and then just pissed it away. Like
I know.
For my answer, though, to my own question, I think it was part of the reason why, you know, there was some guys that weren't legitimate, like, threats to beat Goldberg. Then there was. I think it was part of the icing on the cake that kind of ended WCW a little bit. I don't believe Kevin Nash was the guy that should have defeated Goldberg. There was pretty much, I think in... a guy like Sting should have been it.
Yeah.
Big Show as Paul White back then, or the Giant.
Even though he had already beat him, like I think Bam Bam would have been the best choice.
Bam Bam, yeah. I think if Stone Cold would have became a little bit more of a big name in WCW, that would have been a decent one.
Well, yeah, but that's if Eric Bischoff then basically fire him via FedEx because of an injury.
OJ in the chat says WCW overpaid dudes, and honestly, it's pretty amazing in a pre-pirating pay-per-view world that they were super unsuccessful in the market. I think that was a major downfall. Kuzan's in the chat. He says, "Hey, how's things?"
Things are great.
Welcome, Kuzan.
You know because I talked to you, Kuzan. I can't reveal why we were talking. I cannot spoil.
OJ also says, I think their highest pay-per-view did like 600K, and that was Sting and Hogan in 97.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, they were... Well, I mean, they were obviously not caring about pay-per-view buys, even though they definitely should have, because that would have made more than made up for the losses if they were to build up to their pay-per-views correctly.
Yeah. So is it bad for me to like say that part of it, Goldberg's streak ending kind of hurt WCW? I think it did, and I'm not saying in a major way, but I think just a little bit of it was like, well, you're gonna have a guy like Kevin Nash defeat him, like.
Yeah, it didn't help.
Yeah,
it didn't. Can we remember how Kevin Nash was the worst fucking draw in '95, and this is the guy beating probably the most legit fucking wrestler at that point in time, because he didn't have lawn matches, and the reason for that is because he was super green, but he looked like he could kick your fucking ass, and that's exactly what he did in his matches.
Yeah.
And that's why he was so over. And then they're like, oh yeah, we'll just have this fucking dude who can't move just win the title.
See, like, okay, for example, if we were talking about this back then, right after Goldberg's streak ended by Kevin Nash, we would say, well, he lost the streak to Kevin Nash. That's a little... But now, we don't say it that way. I wouldn't personally say it that way. I would honestly say it, he lost to Mr. Terrace Quad.
He did. And it's so stupid at the end of the day. It's like, it was so unnecessary. Period. It was just super unnecessary.
Yeah, I see Kevin Nash as like a professional leech. Like, he just comes to each company, he gets hurt or just doesn't do much, and just, like, leeches for as long as he can.
Oh, yeah, and we can get to him, too, because he's involved in the other company, too. Leeching.
Oh, yeah.
Leeching. And the bitch was blowing her while he was doing it.
Craziness.
Well, yeah. Well, we'll get there. Kuzan in the chat says, I think WCW should have stopped living in the past. They didn't make that much new talent other than Booker T, Goldberg, someone else. Although he says the NWO was great.
The NWO was great when it started. The NWO failed when they decided, oh, we need to fucking split these two, split it into two, and then we need to make spin-offs afterward. Yeah. And it's like, no, at that point, call the fucking product NWO and just not have it a faction anymore. Hey, they won. The bad guy won. The bad guy's cool. Which honestly probably would have worked.
I think another thing. Oh, I see. Now I just lost it, but I'm gonna try to freaking remember it now. I think when I had the show with Matt a couple months ago, I said, and I stated this, sometimes too much is way too much, and less of NWO would have been perfect.
Perfect, yeah. Although Kuzan was like, oh, you didn't like the Wolfpack theme? I loved the Wolfpack theme. What do you want about it? It was unnecessary to split them up, though.
Yeah.
I would have just given that to the NWO as a whole if they were going to continue around for 98. Yeah. It wasn't like it wasn't, and you know what the funniest thing is too? Just because they lost to Sting, it wasn't like they lost steam.
No.
That's the thing that like boggled me. It wasn't so much of the fact that the NWO was losing steam, so they figured, well, maybe if we separate the faction, then then it will gain some traction back. It didn't need it.
No.
It really didn't. You could have just continued with what you were doing. Straight up. You could have just continued with what you were doing, and it could have just been still NWO versus WCW. It easily could have been that. And I don't understand why they didn't do it.
Yeah, they should have had a final blow-off pay-per-view, like, this is for all the marbles. And I think they should have went back to their, like, Jim Crockett roots, too. Like, they bring in, like, Nikita Koloff and bring in, like, Tully Blanchard and some other guys. Kind of go a little old school at the end.
Or even bring in a guy like Benoit to be on the team, too.
Yeah, just
some cruiserweight guys, like, that look like they legitimately could kick your teeth in.
They probably should end the NWO, like, it's hard to say, but, like, maybe, like, do a special War Games at, like, Bash 99 or something, like, just where it's, like, just enough where it's, like, all right, this is getting stale, but this is for all the marbles, and we'll end it, and then we'll do something else. I think that probably would have been better. Like, you could have maybe Goldberg against Hogan for the title, and then, like, the rest of the NWO against some WCW guys in, like, War Games or something, just to, like, put the icing on the cake. And
I would have been intrigued for Goldberg, Hogan, and Sting in a triple threat.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have seen... For me, if they were going to do anything, too, is, like, if they didn't want to end the NWO until, like... You could have done the whole route of, like, a traditional, like, Survivor Series, like, kind of thing. Like, even though you can't call it that because, copyright at the time.
Yeah,
you could have had a 5-on-5 tag, in War Games like that, because at that point I don't think they ever did a 5-on-5 War Games, which, you know, speaking of TNA, would later do that later on, but then, you know, they could have done it in WCW, and it could have been like the NWOs. I think the 5 main members, honestly, probably should have been Hogan, Macho, Hall, Nash, and the Giant. And had he stuck around long enough, and then you could have done them fight Goldberg, who would have led the group, would have led the WCW troop, Bret Hart, Chris Benoit, Tully Blanchard, and maybe one more WCW legend surprise. You know what I mean?
Yeah, something like that. Just make it a little interesting, but they just
maybe Sting. Actually, Sting, yeah, it would have been perfect.
Part of me wanted to see the last match be Sting versus Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we got it.
They
Yeah.
did start off WCW basically with one of the best matches ever, was Sting and Ric Flair, right?
Yeah. Oh, we got to hold on. That's something. You want to talk about the early? How about the death of WCW started at the beginning, and here is why. Because now that you mentioned that, the match was amazing between Flair and Sting on the first episode of Nitro. Guess what was overshadowing that? The overbooked mess.
Yeah.
Remember, fucking. I don't even remember how many people were involved in the aftermath of that, but there was like at least.
Yeah, at least I would say, yeah.
It was just like, I think it was like, I don't know, there was like 3 or 4 guys involved in the backstage. Luger came out and completely stole the thunder away from the match. And it was like, what the fuck is happening? I think it was like a full Horseman debacle at that period of time too. Arn Anderson was like chopping the fuck out of somebody. It was like, you gotta be kidding me. This is ridiculous.
OJ in the chat says the bad boys of wrestling, and he also just said, I just blew smoke out of my nose and it felt so good I sneezed, like I just felt my nasal cavity completely open.
Well, there you go.
Kuzan says, I wanted to see Ric Flair not in a t-shirt. Luger's selling saved the company. His selling is the greatest.
Everyone's still on that whole Lex Luger meme train.
Yep.
His t-shirts are too tight too, Billy.
I'm just glad that we didn't end WCW with Sid Vicious leg breaking on TV.
That would have been terrible. Yeah, that was a fucking disaster, man.
I see that right now.
And the worst part is, it's not even his fault. They just told him to do it. They just told him to do it, and they're like, do it, and he did it, and it just fucking, it's just upsetting.
Yeah. So, speaking of WCW, I know it's we've talked about the fall of WCW, but what about the rise of WCW? What made WCW so popular, and what made them so competitive against WWE back then?
Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, Ric Flair, Sting.
Goldberg, too.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about the 5 biggest guys, that would probably be it. I will say that the biggest out of all of them has to be Hogan. The reason why they were competitive was because of fucking Hogan. And then once they got Savage and they got that Mega Power team up in WCW, that was it. I mean, then they and even then it was like they somehow managed to flub it up at the Rise, because they're like, hey, let's make the Dungeon and Doom instead of doing the NWO the first time. They were like, oh no, we got to do the Dungeon of Doom. God awful. But then after the Dungeon of Doom fiasco came the NWO, and I think the NWO and Hogan in general just kind of made the company competitive with WWE. Had it not been for Hogan jumping ship, it would have never happened.
Yeah. Chris, before you before I let you say your piece on that. I think what made WCW so competitive and made the fans go, holy crap, this is actually pretty good, was part of it was Hulk Hogan turning heel for the first time.
Yeah, definitely, because it was like, how dare they kind of thing, or how dare he, because those people, especially WCW crowd, still believed it was real, so they were like throwing legit trash in the ring. So it did like two things. One, the fans who believed it was real wanted to see Hogan get his fucking comeuppance. And two, it was like watching the fans that knew what was going on was like, wow, they actually turned him heel. I'm gonna watch this shit now. Hell yeah. They finally made it the dick he's always been backstage. Hey! Anyway, yeah, that's you're pretty much right on the money, I think.
Yeah. What about you, Chris? What do you think?
I agree with that. I think, it definitely was the stars. I think the production quality, too. If you look at a WCW Saturday Night compared to a Monday Night Raw, or if you look at WCW, let's say Nitro, compared to, Raw or Superstars, whatever they had at the time, I mean, WWE looked like junk. From like 94 to about 98.
Yeah, like something happened. Yeah, now that you mention it, like with their camera quality and just it looked so outdated.
Outdated. I mean, even when they switched over the Attitude Era and they got that Titantron thing, that looked junky too. It always looked junky in Bush League and.
Well, however, that was the appeal of the Attitude Era. That it's always going to be iconic now.
Yeah, it was different. I remember just looking at that and being like, well, look at Nitro compared to that. I'm like, whoa. Even the rings look slick. Like the WCW ring looked fresh and new and, different.
Yeah.
And better looking. I mean, just visually, I think Nitro had a better. And I also noticed, too, they got more in pop culture. Like WCW was all over the place in like 96, 97, 98. It was all over prime time. It was on like Walker, Texas Ranger. They were on
they definitely, yeah.
They were everywhere. They took the place of WWE. It's like WWE wasn't existing. And it's like, wow, this is actually refreshing to see the program that I've loved so long actually win. And I really felt like they were winning. And I really thought, like, well, this is pretty much the end. We'll see Vince McMahon begging for a job on Nitro because this is it. I mean, there's so many signs. But even the little things, too, like the mid-card guys that were showing up and even, like, the managers and just random people they were getting. I'm like, this is pretty awesome. Like,
exactly.
I mean, the roster in 98 I thought was so ridiculously stacked. It's like you could have like 3 companies in that thing.
Mm-hmm.
You really could have. I would have done 3 brands, honestly. They easily could have done it.
And that's what I think they were trying to do with Thunder. They were trying to have that a separate show and keep certain stars on there, but it never really happened that way. But
yeah, it was. You could tell too. Like somehow, I don't know what. Like because the WWE wanted to do a brand split. I think like all dating back to what was it like when the idea of SmackDown was pitched and back in like what 98, and like that's right around the time where Thunder was starting, and they must have overheard because they were like, oh, we gotta hop on this thing before they do it. So they created Thunder, and they had no plans on how to go about it. Like they didn't even know that you probably need other like different titles on the brand. Yeah, like a world title, a mid-card title, and you want to know the funniest thing too? It's not like they couldn't have done it either. They could have just done what you could have created, like a Universal Light title on Thunder, and then you could have also done like, what was it? Why is my mind blanking? Friggin' the like the television title as the main belt there, while the U.S. title is the main belt on Nitro. It's not like they didn't have enough belts anyway.
There's so many.
There was so many titles. It was because the thing about it is as well is like Japan also got pop culture, and Japan was on the rise and being popular overseas. So a lot of what Bischoff was doing, he was pretty much stealing the ideas of Japan. So he was creating all these titles, bringing back some titles, and just, having all these different belts and whatnot. I mean, granted, you have your Cruiserweight title as well, but, that was great, but it's like you could have done so much with this, you know what I mean? And you could have started the women's division had you done it properly, but, you know, Bischoff was never concerned about that.
So,
Poor Medusa.
I do want to say something, though. Basically, what we're trying to say is the rise of WCW was partially because Walker, Texas Ranger was mentioned on this show.
Pretty much.
See, I do have some good funny comments sometimes.
Well, I mean, WCW has always been in pop culture. Like, for me, and I know this is going to be like a guilty pleasure kind of thing, but I love the thing with fucking Sting and RoboCop, where RoboCop tears the fucking door off the kid's door. I love that shit. I don't know why, but it's so cool. Like, RoboCop, like, just helping out Sting is like, that shit's cool. Yeah, like, I don't understand the big fuss about it. You know what I mean? It was a good idea.
They make it seem so horrible. I'm like, it's genius marketing. That was like the biggest movie at the time. Why would they not have RoboCop on there? I mean, it's just WWF likes to rewrite history. You know, it's like.
I guess.
Sometimes bringing in movies and stuff like that to, you know, the show isn't such a bad thing as many people may complain about it nowadays. But I don't see an issue with it sometimes. You don't do it every week, but if there's something that you think could work to help, you know, market both at the same time, why not?
Yeah, well, I mean, here's a prime example of this. This is why I love you talk about the period of 98. I mean, there was no hotter period in wrestling than 98, and I don't think there ever will be again.
No.
Like 98, early 99. Both WWE's roster and WCW's roster was stacked. You had ECW on the rise as like the underground stacked, also stacked, with like a whole bunch of talent we've never seen before still, because like Heyman was always a scout for talent, and it was the best time to be a wrestling fan. I still remember watching like at the same time where they had like Joe, what's his name, fucking John Leonard or whatever, and like in WCW, and then like I think it was not too long later, Mike Tyson comes in, and they were just like doing a celebrity off thing and they had Dennis Rodman on WCW. Then like people like Arnold started showing up, and it was just like it was a pop culture thing, pro wrestling.
It was great.
It's in a way it was kind of like Fortnite, if that's a weird comparison to make, because like all these celebrities just randomly started playing Fortnite.
Never expected that one from you there, James.
Like it's pretty much what it is. Like that, to compare it now.
Okay, back then when we had guys like Mike Tyson and all them guys coming into like WCW, WWE, it was okay. It was good. It was good marketing for both all around. But when we had that WWE having celebrity host Monday Night Raw and the Super Shows back then,
Jeremy
Piven,
that
was the worst idea you could possibly have, unless the celebrity was a wrestling fan.
Oh my God, Jeremy Piven, you're banned from the Summerfest. Summerfest.
I just didn't understand it. I mean, Bob Barker, for crying out loud.
No, come on. Bob Barker was awesome.
He was pretty good. He was a big
give me a break. He was Bob Barker. You can't shit on Bob Barker. He was like the highlight of that Raw. It was the only good thing I think about that whole Raw, and he was pretty much on almost every segment.
Yeah,
it was great.
And I remember reading or listening to Chris Jericho's podcast, and he actually mentioned Bob Barker, and he said, you can't imagine how hard it was for me not to straight up die laughing and keep that straight face.
Probably, because it was like, how could you be mad at Bob Barker?
Yeah.
You know
he said
I mean?
It was probably one of the funnest things he got to do. OJ in the chat says, Buff Bagwell was great. His promos were mid-card. He did wear blackface in 99 when feuding with Ernest Miller.
Oh, God! Oh, God! Oh, God! See, this is why Buff Bagwell could go fuck right off. He ain't the stuff.
So, anything else, guys, that you want to mention about WCW? WCW, before we move on, any final comments?
It died. It's dead now.
It's dead
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, I mean, those are all factors leading up, just there's not that one guy that was in charge to say, hey, this is the way it's going to be. If not, you can sit out and go home, So
everyone was the boss of each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so no one was the boss of anybody. Everyone was going to do their own fucking thing anyway.
And that's part of the reason why, like, Nash and them have really bad heat with some of the guys nowadays, too.
Still do!
Still do.
And I'm surprised that people are like, I still like Nash. How? Dude's a fucking mark for himself. He'd bury you the first chance he get if it means he gets an extra payday and a freaking push.
Yep. True.
Right.
Alright, moving on, guys, to something I'm not really, to be honest with you. You guys gonna have to really throw more of
you and I got this. You and I got this, new school. Let's do this shit.
Chris. World Wrestling
Is it Chris?
All-Stars.
Should I call him Chris? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's fine.
World Wrestling All-Stars. Go ahead, guys.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to talk about TNA, obviously, guys, but the reason why we bring up World Wrestling All-Stars, a lot of people don't understand, is because World Wrestling All-Stars was pretty much the period in between WCW closing down, because it started in 2001, to then TNA forming in 2002. And it was like, I think they ran shows quarterly, I think.
Every couple months, it seemed like.
Yeah, if you want to know what World Wrestling All-Stars is, you can look at a Nitro set from 2000.
Yep.
There's really not that much difference. In fact, I'm almost positive they decided to buy out at least some of the equipment or even steal it to just use it as the set. There was no difference. I'm like, am I watching WCW again? Like, what is this? And Bret Hart comes out as kayfabe commissioner. So again, am I watching WCW? And then the midgets came out. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I'm definitely watching WCW. Like, and if not a worse version of it, it was basically Vince Russo was he head of creative? I don't know. Like I remember Wrestling with Regret talking about it, but it was like, I think it was Vince Russo was the head writer, or no, it was Jeremy Borash who was the head writer, but it was clearly Vince Russo telling him what to write over the phone.
That was bad.
It was pretty bad.
Let me tell you a story real quick. One of the independent shows that I went to about 2 years ago, okay? The main guys that they usually have, they only had about not too many fans. Maybe 40 people showed up. Fans. That's not really that much, okay? And sometimes it happens. The following month, they booked an all-midget show, and 300 people showed up.
See?
That's the funny thing about it.
Yeah, I mean...
Oh, yeah, because midgets, you're saying, like, midgets draw kind of thing?
Yeah.
Probably. Well, I mean, if it's it depends on who was doing the all midget show, because like there was micro championship wrestling for like a cup of coffee.
Yep, it was them.
Yeah, another thing, Hulk Hogan ran into the fucking ground.
Pretty much.
But go on, guys. Keep talking about World Wrestling All-Stars. I apologize for telling my shitty story.
No, that's fine. It's fine. Yeah, so basically the highlight of I feel of World Wrestling All-Stars, there was two highlights. The first highlight that I could think of was there was like a multi-man match, and it was the only match that I think AJ Styles and Eddie Guerrero were ever in together.
Yeah.
It's a very notable thing to talk about because it was a very good match. I believe X-Pac was in it too, and like I think it was Billy Kidman before he got signed, and like a bunch of other people, and it was like I think it was 8 guys involved in it, and Eddie Guerrero I think ended up winning the Cruiserweight. I could have it completely out of order because like it was. The booking just is fucked. The point is, Eddie Guerrero won the Cruiserweight title of WWE and then had to relinquish it because he went back to WWE a month later after his rehabilitation drug thing or whatever. And then the other highlight basically was the merging of all the titles with the NWA titles, which were a property of TNA at that point. So Jeff Jarrett united the WWA belt with the NWA title, and that was the last televised broadcast of WWE. Hence, TNA would become a thing after the ashes of WWA, which were of the ashes of WCW.
I just looked up on browser, World Wrestling All-Stars.
Oh, good,
and
good.
The thing that pops up for me is World Wrestling Regrets.
Oh yeah, Wrestling with Regret. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
That's where I basically got this whole information from. Basically.
Okay, you cheater.
Well, I love you, Brian Z. You're good shit.
But
But yeah.
Go ahead, Chris. Anything you want to hop in here and say anything?
I thought World Wrestling All Stars was fun to watch. Yeah, it was basically WCW continued. I mean, they had Jerry Lawler there with Jeremy Borash. They were the announce team, so it's kind of neat to see wow, this is what WCW probably would have looked like, Jerry Lawler with somebody else. And then the matches, the Eddie Guerrero match was really good. There was a couple other ones I remember. Jerry Lynn against somebody was really excellent.
Yeah.
Devin Storm was on the show as Crowbar. I can't remember who he wrestled to. There was a lot of decent matches, and it was definitely a continuation of WCW pretty much. It was the passing of the torch because it became TNA anyway because Jeff Jarrett won the title and they unified them. So it was pretty much the end of an era. But it was nice to see a little bit of WCW going. Because with the invasion, which we'll talk about too, there wasn't the star power that the WWE had. They had the main guys you wanted to see. They had Sting, Jarrett, Steiner, Luger, Bagwell, a couple others.
Oh yeah, that's right. Now that you mentioned that, I forgot about Sting and Luger and all them.
Yeah,
jeez, yeah. I'm actually shocked, that they weren't able to get Sting because WWE got Sting. Actually, now that I think about it. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, and there was some transitional. Nathan Jones was there. He was starting to get a little bit of a.
Oh yeah, well, people rash on him that he was green as goose shit, and by the way, he was.
He was, yeah, definitely a body.
Oh my god, he was the WWA champion for a period of time because it was based in Australia. So of course they had to make the only Aussie guy that they really had champion. So yeah.
I'm trying to think who else was there. Disco Inferno they had.
Oh god, Disco Inferno.
Yeah. Norman Smiley. A lot of WCW was there. A lot of the guys that you were used to seeing, Juventud Psychosis, people that would probably help the invasion.
Just think of WCW 2000's roster. It's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
So you had your AJ Style there at the very end too. So WCW 2001.
They had Chronic too. I forgot they had Chronic there.
Yeah, Chronic and all that. I think the only people that weren't there, I think, were obviously the guys sitting out on their Time Warner contracts, obviously. Which, by the way, speaking of the reason why WCW's invasion sucked ass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much.
We could talk about that. Maybe what? Maybe they should have just partnered up with WWE and they could have just gotten a bunch of talent. Who knows?
They could have.
Who knows?
But do you want to talk about the invasion? Or are we going to talk about TNA first? I couldn't remember. I'm sorry.
I guess we're talking about the invasion.
Invasion first.
Oh my.
Let's get into it.
Goddamn disaster. Hey, look at this. Look at WCW's band married bunch of jobbers. Hey.
I know. Like, it all started with the end of Nitro. Like watching it live was just horrific. It was like watching the end of the Titanic.
No, that's actually a really good example.
It was like, oh my gosh, we're all going down. There's no way to stop this. And I said to myself, I'll never see Nitro again, because I knew, like, I mean, being 15 years old, you know, in high school, I don't know everything, but I just knew that WWE wasn't going to handle it in a professional, you know, best for business, whatever they say, manner. I knew, like, the ego stuff would get in the way, and that'd be it. We'd be screwed. I'm like, we're screwed. And I told my friends in high school, they said, oh, this is going to be great. I said, guys, no, it's not. They're not going to do it how you think they're going to do it. This is going to be horrible. No one listened to me. I was telling them, I said, wait till see what happens here. It's not
and then look, it fell out of pop culture.
It did. It was horrible. Like, the last Nitro was so sad.
Actually, I'll put it to you this way. It very well, even if they fucked it up, people would have complained, but it still would have been pop culture. I think the thing that really screwed it up was before the invasion. Oh, let's have Austin join McMahon. No, you idiots.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it made no sense. Like, I mean, like, starting it off, like, we really weren't sure what the plan was. There was never, like, a secure plan, like, all right, this was going to happen. We had, like, a 3-month hiatus. I mean, the buyout, I've done, like, a lot of research, and I've seen, you know, I've listened to Bruce Pritchard's podcast. I've looked at Dave Meltzer's notes. I've listened to what JR has said. Everyone seems to kind of forget what really happened. Like, I don't know, I wasn't there for all their conversations, but they forget a lot of history. But anyway, like, it seems to me like there was two different things that were going to happen. Either they were trying to get to stay on TBS, and that was before they bought it, and they would just keep Nitro going. But once they found out they couldn't have TBS, they tried shopping it around like another network, and then Spike got mad about that, so they couldn't really do anything, so they were kind of stuck with it. But then they just couldn't, Spike didn't want it on there, but then they were going to put it on there, like on late night. And then they never really did. But to me, it's confusing. It's like, well, wait a second. If they're going to put it on there, they already have everything ready to go. They blame this Booker T and Buff Bagwell match. Now, to me as a WCW fan, I've watched it my whole life. It looked like a Saturday night match. Whatever. It wasn't the best. But wait, to me, it's like, why would you do that anyway? Like, you bring in Stacy Keibler, she's like the announcer. That makes absolutely no sense. Arn Anderson and Scott Hudson are your like half-ass like announce team. Like, that didn't make any sense to me. Like, Scott Hudson I get, but Arn Anderson maybe announced like twice. I've ever heard him on, you know, Nitro.
Never made sense. If you want to, like, and not to mention, like, not even like 3 months prior to that or whatever, you easily, and I mean you easily, could have had freaking Mean Gene and Bobby the Brain.
I mean, I don't understand why they weren't involved in it. And I'm like, well, wait a second. All right, so we're having a match on Raw with Bagwell and Booker T, and I'm like, why? Like, that makes absolutely no sense. It would make more sense for like Booker T to come out and do what he did the next week and like whack McMahon. But like, I was just like, all right. And then I watched it. I'm like, well, this is stupid. Like, there's no Nitro. Like, where's Nitro? So like, they're doing this match, and then I've read on like different articles that McMahon, like Kevin Dunn said, like, you know, why are we gonna like let WCW win? Like, why are we gonna tell them that their wrestlers are better than ours when we've told them for the past 30 years that we're better or whatever? And I'm like, wait a second. And then, like, McMahon just decided after that match that that's it. And I was talking to Logan about this earlier. Like, everyone forgets the SmackDown that happened the next 2 days.
Oh, yeah.
There was actually really good matches. Like, Kidman against Shane Helms, like, they pretty much tore up the place. It was pretty good. I'm not saying it was like a 5-star, like, the greatest match ever, but the fans were loving it. And then they had Booker T against DDP, which was actually pretty good, too, for the title. So I'm like, well, wait a second. If that was so horrible, that one match, then why did they cancel it and still have the other two matches, which were actually better, and then say, well, you know what? Sometimes we suck, but like these two matches are really good, so let's keep going with this. But this is why this doesn't make any sense to me. I'm like, they can't just say, okay, one match.
They were trying to put the blame on Booker T and Buff Bagwell.
Yeah.
Like their real feelings on WCW. That's what it was, Chris.
Yeah.
It was not the fact that they had, like, and this is why I will always say that the WWE is probably, and I mean this, and I quote me on this, fucking Logan, get the fucking soundbite clip ready, is the most dishonest fucking company on planet Earth.
Yeah, I mean,
period. And here's Exhibit fucking A. They're saying like, oh, this Booker T Buff Bagwell match is so awful. Ugh. No, it's not the reason, because you had Booker T, DDP, you had Kidman and Shane Helms. These were great matches. You guys just decided, okay, well, screw this. We're just gonna have a bunch of jobbers try to fight our guys, and we're gonna win because, you know, easily we would win against a bunch of married jobbers.
mm-hmm.
And then they tried to add ECW because the fans were so fucking pissed off with how WCW was being booked and used and portrayed, especially guys like Lance Storm and Booker T and all this shit, that they decided to, you know, they had to bring in ECW guys because they needed star power, and the only star power was ECW.
Yeah,
Pretty much the entire brand of ECW was carrying this fucking angle at that point.
Well, that was my question too. Like, what was the original plan for that? Like, no one really seems to have like.
There was none.
Like no answer for it. It's like, oh, wait a second. Like, they signed RVD and Tommy Dreamer, but like, were they supposed to be a part of WCW, or were they just going to hold off with ECW? Because if you're trying to launch a brand, another brand, well, what are you gonna? How are you gonna deal with ECW? Like, because they were just setting it up for like WCW against WWF. And then all of a sudden, like you said, yeah, they dropped the angle. Because I thought they were starting to. I liked the angle where it was going. Like, Booker T was like a good face, and they had him like DDP as the top heel, and they were going to pretty much go at it, which was fine. But then the next week they said, "Ah, screw it!" Like, it was just stupid. Like, it made no sense. And like I read too, like the original angle was supposed to be a splitting up of the assets between the McMahons. So like the divorce was going to be Linda McMahon giving either Nitro or whatever SmackDown to Shane, and then Vince McMahon taking whichever one he took, and those were going to be the two shows. And see, now that type of draft makes sense. If you're going to do a draft, it's between two companies, that makes sense. Not like some draft like 5 months later that confuses everybody. Like, why are they fighting each other? It makes no sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a draft between two of the biggest companies of all time, sure, that makes perfect sense. And like, you know, you throw some ECW in there eventually, yeah, like that's perfect. But like, to me, like, this whole, they just went up against everything. There were so many chances to turn everything around so many times, and they just refused to do it. And like, even when they brought, I was telling Logan this in too. Like 5 months later, they bring in Ric Flair. He was like the GM of WCW. All they could have did was said that, you know what, we lost the first round, but I own the company now. Round 2 is gonna be a lot different now. Stuff like that, you could turn the whole course of it, but they just gave up. They were lazy. Like, it's just ego and all that gets in the way. But
I think they give up nowadays too with
oh yeah, absolutely.
Like some of the booking before some of the pay-per-views. It's like, where was
they
the
don't
booking?
care.
They don't care. I think.
No, you know what? Because we don't approve that we don't like the way they book Roman Reigns. So they're gonna be like, all right, well, fuck you. We're not gonna book good pay-per-views for you then. So who the fuck wins here?
Yeah.
You don't. I don't. No one fucking does.
But I will say, OJ in the chat says Nitro was the better show to Raw until late '99.
Yeah.
For the most
I mean,
part.
yeah, for them, yeah. I mean, you can't
because Vince Russo was still doing bad writing on Raw. It wasn't all like, you know, fucking sunshine and rainbows. Trust me.
We were talking too, like, I don't know what the original plan would have been for this whole thing. Like, this is what really confuses me too, because I listen to podcasts and I read these notes of people, and like, okay, so we have this invasion. It's almost like, why are we doing the invasion to begin with? Like, aren't we just going to try to launch Nitro first? Like, wouldn't that make sense? Like, I just never understood this. Like, it seemed like they rushed that pay-per-view.
No, Vince was never going to bring Nitro back. Although he probably would have, like, if he was smart, he would have moved all the Nitro people onto SmackDown, and then, like, you would have had your brand split already early. I mean, could you have imagined, too, like, some of the matches you could have had on there? Like, I could have imagined, like, a really good cruiserweight match between Little Guido Monotero and not Super Crazy. Dean Malenko. That would have been a fun match. And then you could have Super Crazy and Rey Mysterio Jr. Like, just all these different fucking matches that you could have had. I could have seen Ultimo Dragon, like, take on a bunch of ECW's cruiserweights too. Like, they actually had cruiserweights still in ECW at that time. And it was just, I don't even know. It was just really ridiculous to me.
Well, it's so confusing, too, because it was like, well, we're going to launch Nitro eventually, but we're going to do this invasion, and the pay-per-view's in 3 weeks, so here we go. But, like, I just thought that was such a bad move. I'm like, just wait till you get the show. Like, I actually found a commercial about it. They were talking about the new WCW with Shane McMahon, and they were talking about the dates of when these shows were going to happen, like these house shows and stuff. So, I mean, there was, like, somewhat of a plan, but I'm like, I mean, I feel like there was, like, two different problems. Like, I feel like they probably thought they were leading the fans on way too long, like, they got to get something going. But then at the same time, like, well, you should have had the show locked in, like, you know, what were you putzing around for?
I'm going to read something to you guys. The
Sure.
WWF had effectively doubled the size of the roster with the acquisition, of WCW, and as a result, there was not enough screen time for everyone. So their original plan was to find a time slot on TNN to continue running WCW as a separate entity. Polls were even put up on WWF.com and WCW.com to decide the name of the show. These plans fell through when no TV station would touch WCW because of its reputation for losing money. I don't know why no TV station would touch them when it was owned by a different fucking company.
Yeah, it makes no sense. Like, I mean, and plus they said the roster doubled. Like, I kind of challenged that too. I'm like, well, it really didn't. All you did was sign about 25 guys, if that. They really didn't bring in a lot of people. I mean, most of them were down OVW for so long too. I mean, there was a whole other group down OVW that never saw light of light of day.
Yeah, too. Like that, you easily. I mean, it was like, I think it was like around that time too, where Jim Cornette was actively trying to get rid of guys and bring them up to the main roster because they were more than ready. And two of those people were already John Cena and Randy Orton. Like, yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, and then it was also Leviathan there. Brock Lesnar, even though he was a pain in the ass for Jim, they had freaking what was it, Shelton Benjamin, all these talented guys in OVW that weren't just from WCW. And it was, you had so much fucking talent in the your own developmental territory, and from your acquisitions in WCW and the AOL Time Warner contracts that would have ran up at the end of 2001. And it boggles my mind that you're saying, oh well, no one wanted to touch it. Put them on fucking SmackDown.
It just doesn't make sense.
It's crazy that you mentioned OVW, because it's crazy that what I read that officials backstage, they viewed the number one top guy in OVW that back then was Shelton Benjamin, and it was weird.
Yeah.
And look what happened today.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of those guys could have been brought on like a Nitro show, and it would have been like the new era, and and people would have accepted them. I mean,
Lesnar could have took control of that show
easily. You easily could have done it too. Like, and I can only imagine what would have been great too, because if you'd have brought Lesnar up earlier, the thing that I would notice right off the bat is that you could have had Lesnar be the champion 6 months in like you did before. And then he's the WWE champion on SmackDown like it was before. But it would have been earlier, and you could have done Goldberg and Lesnar for WrestleMania 19 as opposed to 20.
Yeah.
And, they wouldn't have been birthed out by the road schedule. At that point, around that time, you know what I mean? And it would have worked out so well, because then you would have had all these great matches. I mean, not to say that, what we didn't get at WrestleMania 19 wasn't great, because it was Kurt Angle and Lesnar. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But
and
it was
freaking neck. Sorry.
But and then Lesnar almost broke his neck. But it's still, I think there would have been more of a draw for WrestleMania 19 had it been Goldberg and Lesnar for the title, had they booked it right. And there's no reason they couldn't have now looking back on it, because it was like OVW had a bunch of guys ready that they never took. They were always taking like the Joe Schmoes, because Vince, even back then, had a fucking bodybuilder fetish.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of guys. You know, I mean, everybody forgets about Bob Sapp, too. I mean, he was coming towards the tail end, and that guy was huge. I mean, he could have just been like, you know, the next breakout WCW star, you know, for 2001, 2002, but they just...
I don't know. Down.
Okay, I actually have two questions for you guys, and
Yeah.
they're actually really good questions, so I think you guys are going to really like these. First question is, what if, I'm using my segment, of course, what if WWE did get to be able to put WCW and keep it on a TV station? Do you think, in all honesty, do you think Sting would have signed then with WWE and kept doing what he was doing with WCW?
If they're booking it right, yes. I mean, he even said as much, didn't he?
I think so. I mean, I know What do you think, Chris?
That's hard to say. I don't know.
It's a good question, right?
Well, yeah, and it would be like what period of time? Like, do you mean like May or June, or do you mean like more the midsummer, late summer?
I'm saying like right after. Like,
I think he would have went. I think they'd have to center on Sting, though. I mean, to me, he's like the heart and soul besides Flair. Those are the two guys. They always like. I mean, I remember listening to Russo saying you can't start the invasion without Hall, Nash, and Hogan. I said, I'm thinking to myself, BS. You started with Sting and Flair. Those are the two guys that you want to start it with. But you know, I think so. I think he would have came.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my second question is, okay, you have Raw, you have SmackDown, and what if WCW did continue on a TV station like TNN?
Are you saying that instead of doing the brand split like I pitched, it would have been 4 shows as opposed to 2, where WWF were running their 2 shows, WCW were running their 2 shows, but it was owned by the same company, is what you're saying?
I'm saying if we had WCW on like a TNN or whatever, what if they just had 1 show a week or whatever for WCW? You think Sting would have continued doing it? That's basically. But the second question that I have is, WWE owns WCW then, okay, and they want to keep it on a TV station. You have Raw, you have SmackDown, and you have WCW, and then OVW comes in. Who is your top 3 guys for each brand of Raw, SmackDown, and WCW?
Well, so you're making WCW a brand. If you're gonna make it a brand, WCW itself can't be the brand. It would have the showed brand would have to.
I'm saying basically continuing what WCW was doing, but just adding guys from WWE into it and so on and so forth. Not necessarily making it's a brand, but
just a fake company.
Yeah.
I mean,
just trying to make money.
Okay, fair enough, but it's still the show name, which should still be Nitro.
That's what I would say. But
who
would be your top 3 guys for Raw, SmackDown, and let's say WCW's Nitro? Of course, I would say Nitro. Sting is 1.
Sting, yeah. I mean, your top stars for all 3. I mean, isn't any question it'd be Rock, Austin, and Sting. I mean,
well, I'm saying 3 for each. Who would be your?
Yeah, that would be it. Like Austin for Raw, Rock for SmackDown, since he invented the fucking show, and Sting for Nitro.
This is what I would say, and bear with me. I don't know what you guys would say. I would say Raw. You have Stone Cold, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels. The top 3 on Raw. You have
Sure.
Kurt Angle, The Rock, Jericho. WCW. What if it was Sting, Ric Flair, and The Undertaker? Could you imagine?
I like The Undertaker. Like, wrench in there. It's actually interesting. That's intriguing. I'd watch it probably if Undertaker was on.
What do you think, Chris, of that idea, and what would you do?
I think it would have. I think it definitely would have worked. I mean, pretty much their illusion would be it's still the rivalry, so it'd be just WCW on TNN. It's a separate company, but it's owned by WWE, so they make it look like WCW. That would be fine. But they start making, like we were talking about ECW in 2006, where the ropes are like WWF, and they start sliding the logo in. There's your problem right there. Realistically, the three would be like who they would bring over. Like realistically, it'd be Bagwell, Booker T, and DDP. That's who we had. If I had the option, it would probably be Sting. I'd have to put Booker T because he's the world champion, so I can't take him out. Like he realistically has to be one of the guys. And I'd probably bring in Goldberg just because people want to see him. He is going to make money. That is like all your dreams come true with him. And then on Raw, from what I was seeing, it looked like it was like, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and it looked like Triple H was on top, and it looks like they're really pushing Benoit. I'd say those three. SmackDown, I really don't know. I guess like Kane, Undertaker, and maybe something like that. I'm not really sure. I just remember Benoit at that time. They were really pushing him.
That roster would have been so stacked for all three, Nitro, Raw, and SmackDown. You could do a draft, and I think the draft would be amazing that way.
Yeah.
I just think if you wanted to try to keep WCW relevant and maybe adding the Undertaker to that like that, I think it would be unique and make it, you know what I mean.
I think the thing for me is eventually, I think they should do the whole WCW brand, but at the same time, if they're gonna do the angle right, and let's say if WWE never decided to do the fucking XFL, and the restaurant that failed to, and they saved their money for an opportunity like this. Let's say that they could buy out all the Time Warner contracts, pay them the exact same amount that they were going to get paid, and then they also were able to buy the assets of ECW. All the money that they pretty much wasted on the XFL and the restaurant would have been able to pay for all that. Let's say, what if that were to happen, they have 4 shows instead of 3. I know it's a little overkill, but then you could have had Thunder, and all the ECW guys could have gone over to Thunder. And then, your Tommy Dreamers, your Sandmans are wreaking havoc over there, and it's still ECW. You could even call it ECW Thunder, and then WCW Nitro, and then eventually it builds up to this brand war. To then they all kind of fall. Or WCW and ECW eventually is going to fall because it's WWF, but then they could still keep the 2 shows, and you could have this mega brand split every year. And it would probably be a little overkill, but it's not like WWE. We're not going to plan on doing that anyway because they're already stuffing so much content in our face anyway. But at least this way, the content's good. Content's good.
Imagine if they were all still around now. It would make perfect sense. Sure, we have 200 guys on our roster. We have 3 different companies we're pushing here. I mean, it makes perfect sense. But, and they still were doing it. I don't think they even noticed they were doing it. Like with Paul Heyman feuding with Eric Bischoff. I mean, you're still having these companies sort of feud anyway. It's just, no matter how you slice or dice it, that's how it's supposed to go. And people they can ignore it all day. Vince McMahon can ignore it, but he should have did that because he would have just made hand over fist.
It would have made so much money, dude. It would have made fucking...
Imagine...
That would have made the company millions, legitimately.
Imagine Vince McMahon being all smirky in maybe one of those stupid office or backstage segments, and all of a sudden he just gets whacked right in the back of his neck and falls over. And you just see Bret Hart standing there. There's your first match of another pay-per-view. I mean, it's just they could have made so much money. Like Rowdy Piper coming back, so many guys.
Yeah.
I mean,
I do want to mention OJ in the chat says WWECW, and then he says Hogan under his Time Warner contract. He says, I do not know, man. The cost of shows is a lot. Like, honestly, it would have been too expensive if I'm not sure WCW interest was too high if WWF didn't even pick up the viewership from them. And he also says, so would you put on pay-per-views too for WCW, ECW, and WWF? That just like 48 pay-per-views a year.
Obviously not. I mean, you obviously gonna have to do all the pay-per-views quarterly, but that would make it more,
I have
more of a spectacle. Except for obviously the big four, where all the brands merge.
Yeah.
I have a great idea for James, Chris, and I. I want to see what you guys think of this idea. In the future, it doesn't have to be tonight. But what if we come back to this on another episode of Rewind, and instead of the rise and fall of WCW and TNA, what if we try to resurrect and we book how WWE would have saved both WCW and TNA if they would have purchased them, and we did our own little booking.
Can I do my Adam Blompied impression?
Yeah, I guess.
Yay!
So what do you guys think, Chris? Are you down?
I can do it better.
Yeah, what type of booking would you like? Would you like there's a couple different ways. No buyout, the Fusion Media buyout, Vince McMahon buying it, or how it happened and you make the best of it?
Yeah, I would say WWE buying WCW TNA, but basically like I mentioned, making trying to keep WCW on air as its own entity, but also include it with WWE. That roster would have been so huge. They could have made a draft. They could have each year, stars go over to WCW and all that, and stuff like that, and just to keep it fresh and all that. And
yeah, it would never get old. I mean, because then you figure all the young guys would come up, and they'd have to return. I mean, we'd be watching it right now. I mean, but would you like it with who they had, or if you had unlimited possibility?
Like if Sting would have signed with WWE to continue the success with WCW.
I feel like here's the thing that I think needs to be said if we're gonna do this right.
Yeah.
There was no XFL there was no XFL creation, there was no WWF New York creation.
Yeah.
Okay.
No outside projects that used the money of the WWF, which never should have happened to fucking begin with, because I think what Vince did was illegal anyway.
Now he's doing it again. He's wasting more money. Imagine if he wasted that, something worthwhile.
OJ in the chat says, I love it, a fantasy booking night. I will be on, right? Yeah, of course, OJ. You can come on. I think I want to see.
We gotta have him run ECW. We gotta have him run ECW Thunder.
If our fantasy booking would be better than what happened in the invasion and the purchase of WCW. I think
if 2K18 weren't a fucking bitch, we could have simulated the shit. But
because
we gotta erase your data if you download anything.
I think it would be really badass.
I did rebook the what if they didn't buy out? If WCW would have kept going without any buyout, and it ended up being pretty boring. It didn't really, there wasn't much to go with, but
I think we could do it because there's so much talent, and
with the buyout,
and the storylines that we could create. I don't even think we needed to add ECW. I mean, you could maybe put ECW on all 3 of the shows and just have them one match.
My issue with that though is there was always you got to remember how stacked ECW was even at its deathbed. I mean, they had a whole fucking big roster still. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I wish they would have just with ECW. I don't think they got their due justice. I would have held off till maybe October with them and then start doing. But then again, they could have. See, the problem is I really feel like they should have just had that first invasion with just WCW and the WWF, and then add ECW in there. I'd have RVD whack Jerry Lynn or something, Let's do that. You gotta make sense of it. Like, you can't just be a stupid McMahon storyline that no one cares about. You have to have you have to think out of the box and think like, all right, what were these other people watching on these other shows? It's not just WWE anymore. It's everybody. So we got to figure out who was feuding with who. And, you got to pick up where they left off.
That's what I want to attempt and see what other people think of our opinions. OJ says no. ECW Thunder would just be Sandman spilling drinks on minors, and he also said ECW didn't have the talent post 99, so I would be trading for guys.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, you had Steve Corino, you had Justin Credible, Rhino, I think Sandman,
RVD, and
Dreamer. Yeah, most of the guys were still there.
Jerry Lynn too.
Okay, so
Little Guido.
So I think we're all in agreement that if we did have it Raw, SmackDown, and WCW Nitro, the three main guys would be Stone Cold for Raw, SmackDown The Rock, and WCW's Nitro Sting. But we're not going to do any more. We'll just say that for now.
Yep. I think he would have came. I mean, he was almost going to be there for WrestleMania of 2002, but Sting decided not to. But I mean, even with that,
he saw what happened, and then look what happened when he did show up in 2015. He got fucked.
We did a podcast. It was Sting dead on arrival, and I don't think we were too far off.
Yeah.
It was just bad.
OJ's making me laugh over here. I will trade you Little Nunzio, Tommy Dreamer, and Jack Victory for Benoit. Goldberg for Nitro.
It's getting feisty over there, huh?
I guess we should, because maybe we can trade the ECW talent pool. I guess, I don't know, but I'll tell you this right now. I'm at least having Little Guido. I'm having Super Crazy. I'm getting to Jerry. You're giving me all those small guys so I can build my cruiserweights.
We'll get to it once we do that show, but we're not just going to do WCW. We will be talking again. What we're about to talk about is the rise and fall of TNA. So let's say WWE did buy TNA. We can also book TNA being purchased by WWE and also.
That'd be a fun one too. I mean, you could do it right now, really.
Well, considering the fact that they have all their TNA talent from 2006, 7 anyway, from their A-days.
It's crazy.
I'm saying one match that me and Chris talked about earlier today. Was that the idea of instead a couple years ago at WrestleMania, it was supposed to be not Kane versus Undertaker again. It was supposed to be the Monster Abyss versus Undertaker. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, Chris, Abyss was supposed to be a brother of Kane and the Undertaker in the storyline.
See, and that'd be awesome because that makes sense because he looks like a little bit everybody, So I think that would have been good. I would have loved it just because it's Abyss and he's in the main event,
Yeah. And by the way, thank you, OJ, for that cheap plug. He says, speaking of Sting and WWE, check out episode 1 of The Morning OJ, which is my morning show called The Morning OJ with Logan Myers. Night of Champions 2015 was on his list of overrated pay-per-views, and that was a cheap plug for the show. Thank you, OJ. Chris, actually, that's a good question. What was your, if you had to pick one pay-per-view, not WrestleMania, what would be the most overrated pay-per-view you ever had to pick?
From any company?
Yep, any company.
I would have to say Victory Road 2004.
Good one.
It just did not deliver. And that was... TNA was so big about hyping this, and the show pretty much sucked. I mean, you look at it, it did not hold up. Randy Savage looked like a midget. I was like, wow, Savage is really small. But it just didn't... It stunk.
That was... wasn't that AJ Styles, Jeff Hardy, and...
Savage, yeah.
Savage, and a 6-man against Kevin Nash.
Yeah, Jarrett and the Leeches.
That was what was it?
The Kings of Wrestling, they were called.
Yeah.
It was bad.
Yeah. and then freaking...
1 second, James. And
Oh, wow.
and yes, please follow your boy on Twitter, OJ the Juice. That is OJDAJEWCE. And yes, me and him will be collabing again soon. And he is plugging everyone's Twitter in the comments section. So thank you, OJ.
Oh, Miss Generally. He's tight. Yeah, he's legit going nuts. You gotta get the Vicky TNA. There it is.
Mm-hmm.
There it is. Doing it. He's going nuts.
So let's get into the rise and fall of TNA before we get off this off the show, guys.
Oh boy.
The rise was Vince Russo getting fired.
Let's start
The
about
fall was Vince Russo getting hired.
Let's start with the rise, and then we'll talk about the fall, since we did it the other way around with WCW.
Sure.
Wow. I mean, with TNA, I feel like the rise would have to be the X Division. It already brought something different. You know what I mean? Fuck TNA.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Yeah, I think the X Division definitely brought some good shit in there. Obviously, that was like the thing that kind of held everything together. It was like, you know, with WWA, it was like there was nothing really innovative. It was basically just WCW 2001, which they've already seen, you know, and it was at this point they should have just, you know, done something different, and then the X Division came along, and it was like kind of different. Like it at least had a different name, and then the Ultimate X came about, and that was pretty freaking sick. And they had epic ladder matches before that. I think it was definitely the young talent in the X Division that really held everything together, on top of your, you know, young talent that was actually getting shots for the NWA title too, like Ron Keelings, and along like other stuff too, like and Christian Cage too, when he would come over in 2005. There was just a bunch of stuff going on for TNA. I feel like when it comes to, they actually pushed the proper talent right at the time, at least. And then you know, Vince Russo happened, but you know, I think it was the talent. Talent really made that show, and you can feel it was a more free atmosphere than it was in WWE at the time. At least at the time.
Yeah, I told you we were going to mention Vince Russo's name a lot when it came to WWE, WCW, and TNA. Chris, James, I asked the question earlier, but what made TNA so relevant and consistent with the booking in the beginning?
For TNA, I feel like, to be honest with you, I feel like what made it relevant was the fact that they were always putting on the best matches possible. Like, no one could top them in match quality. I think that was the thing that separated it. Even like because around that time, WWE was kind of slowing their style down, and you could tell it was because they were always doing these ridiculous tour schedules. Which I said, hey, guess what? If you lessen the road schedule, you'll probably get a lot better action. Look at what they did now. So I mean, you know, I feel like TNA always produced the better matches for TV. Yeah, I think that was the thing that kind of kept it relevant. That's why people loved it so much, was because it was like, wow, they're really showing that this is an actual sport kind of thing.
Chris, what do you think? And then I'll read what OJ said in the chat.
So the question was, like, what made them relevant, you said?
Relevant, and what made them so consistent in the booking in the beginning.
I think the NWA title helped. You know, that was a blast from the past. Like the X Division, and I think like Don West almost having a heart attack, telling you how good the show was. I think that really hyped you up too, and I think just the match quality. It was, people were begging for another WCW, ECW kind of show, and they sort of got that with TNA. You know, fulfilled their needs. I think it was hard in the beginning, though, because there was a lot of hodgepodge with the roster. It seemed like there wasn't really much consistency. Like, people would come and go very quickly, and so it was hard to kind of keep up a little bit.
Yep, exactly.
Like, Ken Shamrock was there, but then he vanished pretty quickly.
Wasn't
Sabu.
Sabu
Yeah.
also was, but that happened in WCW as well. He was there one week, and then like wasn't he like booked and even promoted for WCW, and then the next week he didn't even show up.
Yeah, I know he wrestled. He put Alex right through a table, and then like a week or two later he's gone. Yeah, there wasn't much with Sabu there. But I guess it's like his whole career, you know. Anywhere else besides ECW, he's kind of bailing on everybody.
The only consistent thing about TNA in the very, very beginning was that they had Sting.
Yeah. And I think the problem was, it was just like, well, why aren't we seeing more of Sting? Like, they never were. And it goes, I mean, even if you look at GFW today, like, Jeff Jarrett always promises more than he can actually deliver. And I think that was some of the problem with TNA. They'd be like, oh, next week we got Luger and Sting coming. But then the week after, they're gone. It's like, well, you know, this isn't back in, like, 1975 where that's okay. Like, people expect these guys to be there next week, you know? That was so hard. It was like, well, you're bringing these guys in, but then you're not bringing them back. It's like, well, what are you going to do now?
Yeah, it wasn't. I think it wasn't until they got their deal with Spike, where Spike was willing to pay for their contracts, is when Sting finally showed up in Christian Cage, and
yeah, we got some bigger names.
Yeah, and then Kurt Angle, which is like the biggest name they signed at that point.
Oh yeah, that was big.
And then of course, 3 weeks later, the motherfucker shows up, and I can't stress that enough, because I think it did a whole thing where what would TNA's roster look like had I not fucked up? I think that's exactly what the title is too, on Owen's channel, where I do the wrestling rundown, and I named off the talent pool, the potential talent pool they could have had. They would have had the big stars like Van Dam, Kurt Angle, Jeff Hardy, Ken Anderson, all these fucking guys. You would have had the young guys like AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, Samoa Joe, Kazarian, all these guys that were like the heart and soul of that company, as well as your big name values that wanted to help the company to begin with in the first place. The Bobby Roodes, James Storms, the Eric Youngs, all these guys. Yeah, Abyss.
I'm glad you mentioned RVD, because that theme song was badass.
Robert! I love that song.
Oh, effing show, yeah.
I love that song.
OJ in the chat says, I love WCW watching it after the fact. TNA, nah, that shit, gay as fudge. And then he said Christian Cage. Christian was the only reason I watched TNA in 2005 to 2009. He also goes on to say Mr. Kennedy was worth the watch when he came in, but they buried him.
True.
He said, I actually bought a Pro Wrestling is Real, and on the backside, People Are Fake shirt by Kennedy at a house show in 2012. Then Steiner had health problems and missed his match. He said, I was pissed. Literally, only reason I went to the show was to see Steiner. They announced he wouldn't be there, and then I booed every person that came out that night and yelled wrestling's fake, when it is essentially what Vince Russo wants from his booking, for people to heckle. Also, fuck Jeff Jarrett, broke 1 million guitars, never drew a dime. Oh, that's also a big shout out to Never Drew a Dime with Travis and Drew Ortman on Hibiki TMB.
Yeah, the whole thing with that. Yeah, so Jeff Jarrett, I feel like Jeff wasn't bad for TNA, and I feel like he gets a bad rep when it comes to his run in TNA. Like, yeah, obviously he was the champion. He fucked himself the NWA champion. Of course he did. But I feel like it was done better until Russo came along, and then kind of like had these convoluted things on why he was the champion and all this shit, and then eventually, you know, you would get your real guys that deserved the championship. And it was it was fine at that point. You know what I mean? And I even liked the stuff that he was doing with the Frontline versus the Main Event Mafia. I really liked. I feel like he gets a bad rep in TNA for some reason.
Yeah, the Main Event Mafia was actually not half bad. I mean, I know a lot of people do criticize
Nash.
Yeah.
Nash.
But
dude, I never understood that. Like, I understood everybody else. Nash, when they brought Nash in, it lost me.
It even gave Sting another, unique way of building a character for Sting in a different way too.
I liked it.
Mick Foley coming in as well. We didn't mention that. And also, little do people know, Mick Foley and Ric Flair has literally had 3 of the most hardcore matches in WCW, WWE, and TNA, and that's never been. I don't think that's ever happened with anybody else going to all 3 companies and putting on a very vicious hardcore match.
Yeah.
So you guys remember the Mick Foley Kurt Angle in WWE?
Oh yeah, of course I do.
So, I mean, of course, in my opinion, the rise of TNA was the signing of Sting and getting some of them guys in like Hardy and all them, and really, you mentioned
I expected so much. When they brought in Hardy, I expected so much because it's like, yeah, he was just busted for like the shit he shouldn't have done anyway. I get it.
Yeah.
But it's like he just came in, and he was still a huge name, and he was still majorly popular. And I was like, all right, this is TNA might have something here. They already had something with Angle, but now they also have Hardy. They're gonna get Van Dam in here. They're gonna get like Ken Anderson. They're gonna get like who's who WWE guys. If they can push their other young talent as well on top over these guys, and they're the champions or whatever. And even if you want to have Kurt Angle at least in the world title mix and have a Kurt Angle Van Dam main event for Bound for Glory, boom, we have it. We have money here. But oh my god. 10. I mean, you want a disaster of the fall of TNA, it's 10. I mean, the rise of TNA was exactly what you said. It was like they were signing all these guys left, right, and center field. And Spike was like willing to pay up the ass to make sure they were competing with Raw. And I was like, are we going to actually get a Monday Night Raw 2.0? And I was actually stoked. I was excited. I was like, here we fucking go. Here we go, guys.
And people started switching back and forth to wrestling like they did when WCW and WWE was going at it. You mentioned you don't know why they weren't pushing Sting to the moon earlier. You mentioned that. I think it was partially the reason why they didn't was so that they can really focus on some of the new guys like AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Bobby Roode, and Kazarian, and all them as well. I think that did help a lot of them guys get their name out there, because if it wasn't for just booking Sting, what would have happened to guys like AJ Styles and them? Do you think they would have been? Chris, what do you think is the rise of TNA in your opinion?
I think it was a couple different moments. I think watching them go from Fox Sports to Spike, to finally start to get different sites for their pay-per-views, and then I think when they got Hogan, in late 2009, I was like, well, here we go. They're gonna get serious now. And then they brought in some other guys in 2010, but then I was like, I noticed something. I don't know if a lot of people noticed, is they brought a lot of guys from Hulk Hogan's like Hulkamania tour. And I was looking at who they were bringing in. I'm like, it's just all the guys from the Hulkamania tour. So I was like, I don't know about that. Like, I mean, I love the Nasty Boys. I didn't mind them, but like Val Venus didn't need to be there, and there's a couple other guys, and I'm like, ugh. But I did think in 2010, like, they really took a good stab at it. And it was neat because Raw at the time had the Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels face showdown that same night when they had the head-to-head show.
They didn't even try, though.
Yeah,
they didn't even try.
Yeah.
I love that first show when TNA was like revamped. I'm like, oh, finally we're gonna get like a product I can actually enjoy now, because 2009 kind of sucked for TNA. So I was like, well, maybe this will be a good turnaround. And
It was worse.
Yeah, it really. Oh my god! And I think the moment I realized it was lockdown 2010, where they're like, the big surprise is we're naming all these people, and it's Eric Bischoff turning face or something. Like what? It was so shit. Oh god, was it bad? But see, that's the problem. Like I've said with TNA from the beginning, you don't have that one person that owns the company and that's in control of the company financially and storyline wise that can make it or break it, and they just and it just got worse and worse and worse. I mean, it's amazing they're still around, and I think they've done an excellent job of isolating fans and annoying fans to the point where they'll never come back, and they did an excellent job at that. I give them 100%. I'd be glad to shake their hand. They did whatever they could to make the fans hate their company. So good job. I mean,
in fairness to TNA is dead. It's officially dead because it's no longer TNA. It's Impact Wrestling or whatever. So Anthony owns them. So Impact Wrestling is getting on the up and up again, but that's only because Don Callis is running it and he's trying to merge a deal with them, New Japan, and Ring of Honor, which would be great because right now, again, we kind of use it, especially with the whole hype of All In. But yeah, around 2010, it was like, I think the thing that really broke it for me, I remember just I'm watching this show. I'm switching back and forth, and like at least for the first 4 weeks, I remember everything that happened in 2010 when I was watching Raw. I could not tell you what happened in 2010 during TV.
Yeah.
It's all a blur. Like everything meshes in with one. It's like this might be an extreme example, but let's say you're a war veteran and you just came back from Vietnam.
Yeah.
That's essentially what it was with TNA. It's just everything's a blur. Everything happened on the same day or a different day prior to that, even though that was actually the day it happened, and you lose track of time. You lose all sense of sanity when watching the product. I remember the thing that pissed me off. I was freaking when this happened. Van Dam comes out. I was marking out because he was finally getting his just due again, and he beat Sting clean. Won. The crowd was going nuts, and then Sting just takes him out with a bat.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you doing? First off, why is Sting a heel? The Main Event Mafia is dead.
Yeah.
And then why is like Hogan coming out? Why did it become about Sting and Hogan? Why isn't this about Van Dam? He literally just debuted not even a minute ago.
Yeah.
He's younger than the both of these two.
I don't mean to be disrespectful, but whose phone's vibrating? It's making the.
Sorry, my fuck. It's
silent
the chat.
Please.
I try to.
Because it's literally cutting you out on the audio.
Well, I just put it on my bed.
OJ in the chat says he put the NWA title on himself. He basically said, fuck what this belt stands for. Hard work, earning, avoiding politics. Let's put it on me because I'm a fucking mid-carder. And he also says, nope, Hogan. I love Hogan, but he put his boys over in TNA. I mean, come on now. Out of shape Razor Ramon and drugged out X-Pac grabbing his junk wasn't drawing 15 years after its prime. And then he also goes on to say, guys, I didn't watch WWE from 2010 to 16 out of sheer protest. TNA couldn't even make me like wrestling. I would tune in and be like, what? This makes no sense. James,
Yep.
God damn it, man.
Sorry, I know it's off my table now. But yeah, I think the worst. I think the thing that showed that TNA in 2010 was an absolute failure. Keep in mind, Impact already had to switch back to Thursday nights because they got so much fan backlash.
Mm-hmm.
It was unreal, like how much backlash they were getting because they were trying to compete with Raw with the show they were putting on.
Let's be honest, they could not compete with Raw at that. Even though Raw was still lackluster and it still is and all that, you know the fan base for WWE. You cannot just throw your talent under the bus and try to compete with the juggernaut.
Yeah, and I mean, you can't. The thing is, you can definitely compete with them, but you need a clear fucking direction on what you're trying to do.
They did
and
not
TNA
have
didn't have that, and that's why no one stayed tuned in. And that's why people said, if you're not going to do that, go back to fucking Thursdays, because at least you'll get more viewers, which they did.
They did.
They went back to the 1.5.
It still may have not. It still may have killed TNA in the long run, but still, it did help just a tiny bit to move it back to where it was on Thursdays. OJ, you mentioned Christian was the reason why you watched TNA. Let's be honest, the very first time I've seen a glass table, somebody go through a glass table, was Christian. So that's...
Christian was taking the most ridiculous bumps I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
If anybody didn't... and this is why I hate WWE, because if you didn't think he was a main eventer, the amount of freaking blood he shed for TNA was already... should have already told you something. Like, the dude wanted to be a world champion. And he was a world champion in TNA.
Do you remember that table spot there, Chris?
Yeah.
That was insane. Like, I remember being at a friend's house and seeing that. I'm like, is Christian like the Mick Foley of TNA?
Yeah, it was fucking nuts. Like, Christian always took ridiculous bumps. I remember Lockdown 2007, he took like a flat back bump on Tax, and like he had no shirt and he was just sticking out of the skin.
It's crazy to look back when he was involved in the TLC matches. He didn't take the big bumps like Hardy or Bubba Ray going through the like 2 or 3 tables like Matt Hardy and them. He didn't really take big bumps in those matches, and now looking back,
except for like the unprettiers, obviously those are fucking ridiculous, or the kill switch now.
Now, so we mentioned the rise, but what about the fall of TNA, guys?
Well, we're talking about it. I mean, 2000. All right, everyone goes back to Victory Road 2011.
Yep,
to be honest,
Jeff Hardy and Sting, right?
Yeah, everyone goes back to that was the fall. Really was not the fall, because... No. Here's the thing. TNA was getting back on the rise. I remember specifically they even got a stadium for Slammiversary the very next year, and then they started touring. Even if they were pretty much kicked out of fucking Orlando studio, they were still touring. So it was like, they're doing pretty good. I mean, it's actually doing really well. And they had a kind of a good thing going with Aces and Ace. They had a good thing going with like how Bully looked like a massive dickhead.
That turned into being one of the stupidest storylines.
It was stupid, but it did make. Although that did make Bully Ray look good at the very least. It made Bully Ray look like a major heel.
Exactly, Chris. What do you think of the Aces and Eights? Do you think it started out really well booked, but then it was just like, are they trying to make the Aces and Eights that generation or that year of like an NWO? Like, too many people added?
Well, it's always the same story with TNA. They don't think things through. So if we're going to have this Aces and Eights, are they a terrorist organization? Are they some kind of angry employees? Are they a biker gang? What are they? So in the beginning, I kind of thought they were like some kind of thuggish terrorist organization taking over the company, which is fine. But then they kind of morphed into like a biker gang, and it was really dumb. I was like, it was blatantly obvious who the one guy was because his hair would hang out all the time. I mean, how stupid do you think we are? It was that Briscoe guy. I'm like, come on. It's so hard to not just shit all over this company because the stupid mistakes they make with some of the brightest people in wrestling, it's just beyond my belief. But I think initially if Aces and Eights would have been maybe Paul Heyman taking off the mask, it would have been pretty good. But it just was like, well, it's just more recycled guys again.
Yeah, I didn't like that about it. Like, I thought, like, you could have done so much with it. Like, yeah, I could see, like, your Luke Gallows. I actually could see that. I could see a Ken Anderson, sure. And I could see a Bully Ray. And I could see a D-Von.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't see Nux.
Yeah.
I didn't see Garrett Bischoff. Why the fuck is that guy in this?
I was going to mention that. Can you believe that Garrett Bischoff was a something in TNA?
And then not only that, but then you also had Wes Briscoe, who you mentioned. He was awful. He was absolutely junk. And I think there was like one other guy involved. I think it was D'Lo Brown.
Yeah.
And those, I think it was the other half of Eights and Eights that just kind of killed it. And I was like, you could have put in the Motor City Machine Guns. Like, you're trying to go with this terrorist organization biker group. The Eights and Eights fit right in that mold.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
Like the Motor City Machine Guns were right fucking there. Just call them back up.
That's why people started to leave. Like, things like this constantly over throughout the years. People are like, this is stupid, and they don't come back. Like, and this is what they're so desperately trying to do right now. They're trying to be like this hot new indie federation that it's not going to work. But like, they've isolated the fans so badly that there's nothing else to go with them. Like, it's just no one wants to watch TNA or Impact anymore. It's just like, wow. You know, you guys.
I've actually watched some of the stuff.
The writing became on the wall. You know what I mean? So here's the question. Okay, so technically, we had the rise of TNA in the very, very beginning, and then we had the fall of when Jeff Jarrett basically sold the company to Dixie Carter, and there was no rise after that. It just completely kept falling and falling. So it just got...
Yeah, because she signed Vince Russo.
And Hogan.
That's all you need to know. And Hogan and Bischoff.
So technically TNA had it was a rise, a fall, and then the disaster.
Yeah.
You want to know there really wasn't the disaster. I think definitely could be.
And I think, but now it is to me.
Here's a disaster: AJ Styles leaving.
Well,
that was the true disaster.
Right now though, TNA is starting to see a little bit of a rise with them working with like New Japan Pro Wrestling a little bit and working with the other companies and adding more talent and focusing more on trying to make other stars, and that it is a good thing to see. I like that Austin Aries is his own man. He's his own, star in TNA. He's basically the only original left.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's amazing they let AJ walk out the door. I don't know what they were thinking. It's like a WCW situation where Ric Flair left.
And they let Sting go too.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know where the logic is, and it's like we're just left with like nothing really. We're just left with this like pseudo federation with a whole bunch of guys that really don't have a rhyme or reason, I guess, to be there. But they've not progressed. Like, I feel like we're still trapped in like the 2006 bubble where we're like a small federation that can barely like sell out tickets to like a 500-600 seat arena. Like where's the progression here? I feel like they should be like a lot further along than they are.
Another thing, we talk about all the men superstars, but look, the only two things that really have continued to thrive a little bit in TNA is the X Division and the women in the Knockouts division. The Knockouts division.
Well, no, the tag division's delivering on all cylinders too. You can't forget, like right now the whole. I think the way they've been booking the whole new LAX versus old LAX angle is genius for the tag titles. I think that's actually really good how they did it, and it wasn't like one of these stupid cliche ways. Like they built this thing. This was a slow build to Hernandez coming back. I'm like, oh, well, this is good.
That's also another original that in Abyss I forgot to mention, but Abyss is starting to look like he's almost out the door, and
he's getting up there.
we can mention there's a lot of good stuff that excuse me, that we've seen from WCW and TNA, but I mean they both rise to the occasion in the beginning, but they just fell flat in the end, and it's a little shocking that WWE has been in wars with two different companies and has basically destroyed them both.
Oh yeah, they got the money.
But to be honest with you, everybody, I've seen people commenting saying, well, WWE's the reason why WCW is no longer here. WWE is the reason why TNA just fell flat on its face. No, I don't believe that's true. I think WCW killed themselves and TNA killed themselves by giving the company to Dixie Carter in the beginning. The only thing that even was positive about Dixie Carter and TNA was her going through a fucking table.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great night. I think she actually did hurt herself too.
Yeah, she did.
But yeah, I mean, look at that mess. Remember that? That was horrible.
Yeah,
I mean, that was,
OJ in the chat says Hernandez could have been a star, one of the best Latin wrestlers, great look, needed to work like a heavyweight a little more, but he was good shit. I would say the best thing about TNA, even at Kurt Angle days and Sting's days of being the main star, was the X Division. I love the concept of the X Division match with the ropes as an X and all that.
Yeah.
Can I be honest?
One of the things that, yeah, go ahead.
What made TNA different and relevant is the 8-sided, is it the 6-sided ring?
6-sided ring, yeah. Now they went back to 4-sided.
They did do an 8-sided ring.
They always flip-flop because it is a good look. I think the big problem is, though, from what I understand, that the 6-sided ring hurts a lot more, from what I understand. That, like, if you take a bump on that thing, you're hurting, like, true. A lot more. To which I say, get better fucking pads. That's how you prevent that problem.
They're cheap.
I don't know. Are they really that cheap? I mean, can't you, like, the thing about it is it really that hard to add some extra, like, foam underneath to, like, protect the wrestlers?
Well, I've seen better foam under independent shows around here. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, like, why don't you just, like, you could easily contact the local indie fan and they can stuff your ring with more foam. I don't understand why they had to switch back to the 4-sided.
Well, Hulk Hogan wanted to, and Eric Bischoff wanted to do that.
Well, now they went back to doing it again because
it's safer for the workers.
Yeah, it's safer for the workers. That's the only reason they did it.
Yeah. So
the only reason Hogan wanted to do it is because it's like, we need to go to the traditional route, dude.
OJ says Dixie Carterstein. Her husband's name Surge.
Surge.
And their cat's name is Burge. So.
Oh my god.
Surge, like the energy drink from the 90s.
How you doing over there, Chris? You got anything to say about the fall of TNA?
Yeah, before we end the show?
Well, I mean, it was definitely Dixie Carter, Vince Russo, just stupidity, you know, and they were given so many chances by everybody to, like, you know, turn it around, make it better, but they kept on making the same mistakes over and over and over. That's why I stopped watching it, because, like, I just got so sick of the same thing over and over that I was watching, they kept on screwing up. Like, they would invest time in these storylines, people showing up, but then they would vanish, or, like, the storyline would fall through, and it was like, this is just stupid. Like, people were getting excited because Hulk Hogan could take a back bump on, like, Bound for Glory. I'm like, what is wrong with you people? Like, stop it. Like, it was just so bad. I was embarrassed. I had friends over. It was Bound for Glory, I think, 2011.
Oh, yeah.
One of the worst shows I've ever seen. I was embarrassed to have my friends over. And I'll never forget, my one friend was like, this is their WrestleMania? I said, yep, this is it. It was just so bad. Like, they just... Oh, my goodness. It's like
it wasn't the only good match, too, on there was, like, Jerry Lynn and Rob Van Dam one final time. Like, that's how they built it up. The only promise they kept.
Yeah, that was like the only good match, like the only saving grace. Yeah, it was so bad, and I'm like, it's so frustrating to be a fan because like it's so hard to defend such a bad product.
Yeah.
And they would constantly make the same mistakes over and over, and they would just like do stupid things, and it's like, well, where's the follow up to this, or why did you do that, or what a stupid swerve. It's just like, well,
yep. And that's
same thing. Did you at least enjoy 2012's Bound for Glory? Because I thought that was a much better show. Like, it doesn't even come close.
And I'm glad you brought that up. Here's a prime example of why this product gets on my nerves. Robert Roode and James Storm, okay, I think it was like Slammiversary. They were building the whole thing towards like James Storm winning. And of course he doesn't, which I'll never understand why. But then again, okay, so here's your chance. Your time to redeem the whole thing. You have the main event of Bound for Glory is James Storm against Robert Roode and I Quit or whatever you could do, and have whoever the champion is, you know, they wrestle and they have James Storm win the title. And what do? They don't do that at all. Of course, they have random Austin Aries against Jeff Hardy, which made no sense to me at the time. And then they had the match they should have had in the main event was like the third or fourth down the line. It was James Storm against Robert Roode, which pretty much stole the show. I'm like, why was this not the main event for the title? Like, I don't understand. Like, do you want us not to like this product? Like, and it's stuff like that constantly is why I just got sick of watching it. I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. I can't take any more of this.
Yeah, honestly, that's how I felt too. Although I did, for me, I didn't mind it because, like, I guess like I must be a low-key Jeff Hardy fan because I kind of wanted to see him like succeed and like finally conquer his demons, and he looked like he was finally clean, and it was like a redemption from what he pulled like back in 2011. So I was like, oh, all right, well, he's back to, you know, being happy and loving the business, and, you know, he's only had like one DUI incident since he's come back.
I mean,
so it's like, great, cool. I mean, fine. I was totally fine with it. I think that for you, what it was with 2012 was me with the whole. I think just the whole aces and eights thing. Like, I think it was like when it was like right when Styles was about to leave. And I just stopped watching. I'm like, I can't even watch his last match in TNA. I can't do it. I can't bring myself to do it.
And I don't blame you, and that's how everybody feels. It's like, why are we watching this? Like, they don't know what they're doing, and they just don't care. Like, it's just,
they didn't give us a reason to care.
No, they didn't, and they told us every way possible that, you know what, we're not that good.
Yeah, maybe our next show that we do for the Rewind is called Fantasy Booking on WCW and TNA. Maybe the fans and us will all agree together that our fantasy booking will probably end up being better than what they did.
Oh yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
It's got to be 10 times better than what they did.
I agree.
Yep. And unfortunately, though, we are out of time. But go ahead. I'm gonna let Chris go ahead and plug yourself and let everybody know where they could check you out and all your social medias and your YouTube channel.
All right, well, thank you very much for having me on the show today. I had a blast. You can find me and the guys on www.newschoolrepublic.com. You can also check us out on YouTube, just under New School Republic. Same thing with Facebook. We have a group. We just chat and put our podcast up. It's New School Republic Wrestling Podcast. So you can find us on there. Also, I do a action figure podcast about wrestling figures. So it's called Wrestling Figures Tips and Tricks. It's also on YouTube, so I explain to you how to get good deals for things.
That's awesome.
Yep. Next thing we'll be talking about the prototype figures.
How to get a good deal from Logan Myers to get Joey Ryan.
I agree. No one better.
Go ahead, James. Thank you for coming on once again. Where can everybody check you out and plug yourself and your YouTube channel?
Well, OJ Simp promoted my Twitter, even though he's like some dude named JHeberSat95. He's never on there, but give him a look. Hey, I try to be on there. This is what happens when you run into CAW League and pretty much edit the whole thing by yourself. But
I'm still pissed off that you gained 300 subscriptions and you don't normally really post that much.
Yeah, ridiculous. I don't understand how. But anyway, Speaking of which, check out my channel where I don't really post much because I'm too busy with WYW though. But you can check it out on youtube.com/user/jhaberside95. You can also check out the CAW League that I'm mostly posting on right now, which is youtube.com/user/WYW Pride. And good stuff is coming our way with that. So actually tune in because I'm working my ass off to produce the best shows possible to our big mega event coming up, Immortal. Get ready. It's gonna be good. Speaking of TNA and shitty factions, time to bring back a name and actually put some good graces on it.
Yeah.
Hey, I just found out something. Ring of Honor and New Japan are gonna have a dual branded show on April 6th in Madison Square Garden of 2019.
Yeah, motherfucker! They
Take
won.
that, Vince.
That means they won without even having to do a suit with WWE.
Yep.
I like that.
That's good.
All right.
Why can't they? Why can't they?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Good question.
And also check me out here. And you can check me out on the Wrestling Rundown, youtube.com/user/WrestlingFortune44. Or you could search up on YouTube Wrestling Fortune 44. And you can check me out on the Hibiki TMD for the recent podcast I was on called Hibiki High Spots for the Late Night Roustabout. It has a Pasta Mania logo. You can't miss it. It's great.
Yep. And speaking of great commentary and great shows, Hibiki Pro, please get ready because Sweet Revenge will be coming soon when Walter debuts in his very first match for the Hibiki Pro World Heavyweight title in a street fight against Logan Myers. So look out and tune in for that. And you guys can check me out on Twitter at LoganMyers144. You can also check me out on Facebook and right here on Future Entertainment, Future Wrestling Podcast. And this Saturday night, I don't know, you never know, Chris might be joining us. You never know. We will be live on Grapple Vision for Saturday Night Myers. And maybe we might have the Extreme Rules post show on Grapple Vision. But if not, we will definitely have it here on the channel. So tune in for that. In the morning, OJ with Logan Myers will be coming back hopefully this Monday morning. So tune in for that as well. But ladies and gentlemen, hope you guys enjoyed the show. Everybody in the chat, Kuzan and OJ, thank you for being in the chat and chatting with us. And good night, ladies and gentlemen.